Just do it. It'll turn out okay. And welcome all to the premiere of season 14.
Oh, nice. It's the premiere. That's cool.
Yes.
I didn't notice that. That's very exciting.
Oh yeah. Today I have a special guest. Well, some people not think he's special. Maybe he thinks he's special, or maybe he doesn't. I don't know. But I'll have him introduce himself.
Hi. I'm Kipp Davis. I'm a biblical scholar and a specialist in early Judaism and the Dead Sea Scrolls, and I do public-facing scholarship on YouTube.
Awesome. So, are you a real doctor or a Kent doctor?
I am a real doctor. I have let's see, there's my bona fides are right there. I graduated in 2009 from
Hmm.
the University of Manchester in Manchester, England, with a PhD in religions and theology. And I was in school for a fuck ton of time before that. Sorry, can I say that here? I
Yeah,
should have.
I'm not
There's
monetized, so
okay.
yet so
So
words have no effect on me.
yeah, no, that's good. So it's a confusing space to be in because I'm not allowed to say the F word on Dapper's channel, but people seem to really want me to say it. And then whenever I'm on Maya's channel, I'm told it's a 5 fuck minimum. So it is what it is.
Yeah. Uh, yeah, I'm not popular enough to care about YouTube doxing me for cussing yet.
Well, I guess you're in you're I guess I'm in the right place then.
Yeah. So what made you be interested in your subject of study? You always interested, or was it like oh,
Oh,
I want to do that randomly one day?
well, um so from the time I was a kid, I had a strong fascination with the Bible. I grew up in a pretty serious evangelical household. And I've often told, well, I don't know about often, but it's something that I've written about in in the final part of my latest book. Um, I talked about how as a kid, my parents bought for me and my brother a copy of this amazing book called the Picture Bible, which looks like a regular Bible, but
Mm.
is like a graphic novel, just full of the narrated stories from the
Oh,
Bible, from creation all the way through to
oh,
the end of the book
yeah,
of
yeah.
Acts,
I think I
basically.
got one of those. Speaking of your book, I have on my wish list for on Audible.
Very
And
good.
then yeah, I grew up in a more liberal Christian household. We went
Mhm.
to church well, me and my mom went to church. My dad didn't, but we were a Democratic household. So
Say I'm
we don't.
Canadian, that means nothing to me, so
Yeah, we didn't like. My parents didn't like it when the church started, pushing the more
mm,
conservative
mm.
voting things on the church thing.
Right, yeah. Yeah, so, yeah, so there was the Picture Bible, was a book that I loved. It, and I wore the cover off of it, and then something else that my parents, bought for us was a big set of cassette tapes called The Bible in Drama, and there was something like 80 of these individual cassettes, and each one was like its own standalone radio play of
Mm.
Bible stories, all the way from the beginning again to the end. So I listen to those constantly. I developed this strong fascination just with the text, like with
Was
what the
it
Bible is, and with the history, behind it, and the people and the places and all of that. So it kind of, when I was young, that's kind of where it started.
the drama thing? Was it the whole Bible or the like abridged version?
It was pretty comprehensive. I mean, it's not everything, right? Because not everything in the Bible is stories. So, but I think pretty much every story that's told in the Bible was in there. So, like you're talking about, I think it was over 60 hours of stuff. We used to put them when my family would go on these long trips. For our holidays, we would pop them into the cassette player in the car and listen for hours. So it was, but it was pretty cool. It was very cool, and I think from there, I got I when I graduated from high school, I got married pretty young, um, and I felt pretty strongly that I was supposed to go into ministry of some sort. So I went to Bible college, and then transferred into, like, a university, and quickly decided that doing, pastor stuff wasn't a good idea because I'm not.
Yeah, yeah. Back in my 20s, I wanted to be a teen pastor, a youth pastor,
Oh,
and then
yeah.
I also want on my secular side, I want to be a history teacher.
Oh, okay, I see. Yeah. So, but I don't know, I don't like people very much, and that's one of those, if you if yeah, that's a bad, probably a bad trait for like a pastor. So, I moved, I kinda shifted and just started doing the academic thing, and I took as many ancient language classes as I could, and at the same time that I was at, Trinity Western University, which is, out here close to where I live, on the West Coast in Canada, and they had just opened the Dead Sea Scrolls Institute, which was my introduction to the Dead Sea Scrolls, which comprise the earliest physical copies of any biblical texts. So that's just kind of where it started, and it rolled on from there, and now it's what I've been doing for my entire adult life.
I may I ask your uh your your studying of the stuff, did it make you question your faith or stay with it?
No, yeah. So I think, I mean, I think when you ask most biblical scholars, most who study the Bible at, like, the graduate level and beyond, everyone will yeah, if they came out of the same sort of culture and upbringing that I did, I think everyone will probably tell you the same thing, that yeah, this was very challenging. When I was a kid, this isn't something that was really pushed on us, but I certainly entered university with the thought that the earth was probably only 6,000 years old, with the idea that there was an actual exodus and a conquest, and with just a very straightforward picture of the history, as the Bible presents it unproblematically, right? So these are the sorts of things that you get challenged with when you discover that the Bible is really a crafted collection of various types of literature that are predominantly theological and less so historical. So, but it's not something I had I had several faith crises, I think, early on in like my very early 20s. But I continued to confess and identify as a Christian all the way through to the after the completion of my PhD, and even into my first two postdocs. So I've often told people that I've spent virtually my entire adult life believing essentially the same things when it comes to uh, the Bible, when it comes to the supernatural, when it comes to science. Um, and while I no longer identify as a Christian, and I'm sure that played a role, it's not really the thing
Okay.
that pushed me over. I don't think.
Yeah, me too. Well, yeah, you're right thing, but mine was like a slow, like 5 to 10 year uh, fade away.
Yeah, yeah. Um, and for me, mostly it was, and I think I've mentioned this publicly before, but it was. I think the thing that really pushed me away from Christianity and from the church and from identifying as a Christian was my experience with my children, with my kids after I became a father. That kind of did it for me.
Yeah,
But yeah,
yeah, yeah. I think my like last what's it called? Either last line drawn or but it's still the deal, perfectly still the deal for me. Even though I was pretty much gone already at that point was COVID, and the
mm,
church is like, oh, the all of a sudden most churches were like, vaccines are stupid, and vaccines are stupid, don't work, they don't work at all, and blah blah blah, and devil stuff, and it's just that just turned me off completely at
yeah,
that point.
yeah, yeah. No, undoubtedly.
So, you said you're mainly Old Testament scholar, not New Testament.
I actually find I talk a fair bit about the New Testament. My training though, and most of my work is in the Old Testament. I've done a ton of professional work on the manuscripts themselves of like Old Testament textual criticism and literary and redaction criticism. My work in my PhD dissertation was focused pretty. What One of the focuses of it was on this question of the transmission of biblical texts and the ways in which they've been changed and adapted into this grouping of literature that a lot of scholars liked to at the time talk about or call rewritten Bible. So this is where a lot of my focus is, and when it comes to my engagements with the New Testament, that's where I also tend to do a lot of my work is on questions of how is Paul or how are the gospel writers using these older Hebrew and Aramaic texts that are contained in the Hebrew Bible, the Jewish scriptures. What are they doing with them? Because this is like it's really what we find in the New Testament is important material for understanding how people in the first century were reading the text that they had.
Yeah, that's a point. During my last 10 years of church going, back in the early 2000s, I learned a lot of people in the churches didn't even know about that that like some of the early Christians had Jewish roots and stuff.
Oh yeah. Yeah. So, can I? There's a question here
Sure.
in the chat with regards to having kids leading me to not identify as a Christian. From WC Dyke for yeah. So, I have 3 children, and all three are adopted. All three came, to live with us between the ages of my youngest was 20 months when he came to live with us. My oldest was 4 years old going on 5 when he came to live with us, and they all came with varying levels of attachment disruption, and also a variety of other issues which created neurological and social problems for them. And in the course of parenting, um I guess troubled, I don't know how to put it, in the course of parenting kids with these sorts of uh things that they deal with, it had an effect on how I thought about God, about the church. I mean, just as an example, one of my kids, when he was, I think, from the time he was about 8 years old until we stopped going to church, he wouldn't step inside the building, and the reason for that is because it scared him,
Mm.
and he was afraid of death, and so would tell us pretty regularly that going to church only just made him think about dying. And in my mind, I'm like, well, that's not good.
Mm.
I- this doesn't feel right.
Yeah,
So,
yeah, I had a similar problem. Well, not in the church, because it was like when my parents. Sometimes I was a teenager. My parents left, and issues. Sometimes I thought, oh, like they've been raptured. I've been left behind. I panicked.
mm, yeah, yeah. So, and this is so even like my wife and I during this whole time as well, we're trying very hard to foster a home and a culture that promoted religious pluralism. Uh, it made things, yeah, it made things difficult for all of us to remain in the church, to remain um as identifying Christians.
A question and chat, but a question first. Um, do you do you debate or argue a lot with like Bible literalists and stuff, or you have a rival on YouTube in the opposite direction?
I have, yeah, a lot of my material, and I've had interactions. Well, first of all, I don't do debates,
Mhm,
mostly because I suck at them,
mhm,
but also because I'm frustrated with the format. I've I consider debates to be rather pointless contests of rhetoric. They
mhm,
don't help to move the needle, in my opinion, with regards to the things that I'm really interested in, which is um, helping people to understand
right.
things better and more clearly. I don't think they're especially useful for educating people. So I tend to stay away. However, I mean, I do spend quite a lot of time in counter apologetic spaces, and a number of the people that I have encountered, confronted, challenged, corrected, certainly are biblical literalists but this is a spectrum, right?
Yeah.
For for as much as somebody like Michael Jones from Inspiring Philosophy wants to um beat his chest and claim, at the top of his lungs that he's not a fundamentalist or a biblical literalist, and by the strict definition, no, he's not, but he certainly is. Um, he is engaged in promoting forms of these ideas through his insistence of the historical existence of a man named Moses, through an historical exodus and conquest, through his perspective on the formation of the Pentateuch. All of these things, right? These are largely non-scholarly talking points that no critical scholars just don't take seriously anymore. And the minute you get into that, it's I think you're operating in levels and spheres of so-called biblical literalism. Like, I suspect that almost everybody that I encounter in the counter apologetic space, at least on the Christian side of things, and that's another question altogether, because I'm not just I'm not out to get Christians, and I'm not anti-religious. I'm uh I'm all about promoting critical thinking
Yeah.
in all its forms. So I spend a lot of time confronting bad atheist ideas or bad
Okay.
skeptic talking points about the Bible too. And we could talk about that, but on the Christian side, I suspect that almost everybody that I confront would look at something like Isaiah's vision in Isaiah chapter 6, when he sees Yahweh in the temple, and is sent by Yahweh to go and confront the Judean aristocracy. I suspect that everybody would claim that this is something they think actually happened. And that's that's not a scholarly talking point.
I,
It's
yeah, you mentioned the Christian side. Does that mean you have people on the Old Testament Jewish side doing this too? Is it this more of the Christian
not
faith?
really. Well, so there's very you'll I think you'll discover when you spend enough time in these spaces that there's not a lot of so-called Jewish apologists and Jewish apologetics, because they really don't care.
Hmm.
So by and large, within and Judaism is vast, and there's a huge, much like within Christianity, there's huge numbers of different sects of Judaism, all with their own takes, and the religion itself is quite distinct from what we see in the New Testament. Certainly in the Old Testament, it's just a completely different set of rituals and beliefs. But most whereas in Christianity, I just recently did a video. Maybe the best way to sort of answer this question is this way. I just published a video on my Patreon a couple days ago, of a conversation that I had with my colleague, Dr. Joshua Bowen, as well as my good friend, Maya Atkisson, about biblical slavery. And at one point in the conversation, Josh, uh, he points this out, that within conservative Christian spaces, especially within a lot of these Christian spaces that veer more towards fundamentalism, something that's very, very important to these people is that they have all the right answers, and that what they have, that there are facts that they can just stake, uh that they can just stake all their pin all their beliefs on. That's very, very important. It's a little bit different within Judaism, where you've got this ongoing, endless conversation. There's an expression within the Talmud that talks about how you approach the text of the Bible and you turn it over and over and over and over again, because within within that religious tradition, it's more about pursuing. Uh, it's more about the pursuit, I guess, is a better way of saying it. So they're not
Okay.
they're fine with open ended questions and without uh determined answers. Um, there's a couple. Tovia Singer is a Jewish apologist, and no one should listen to him, especially when he talks about Christianity, because he doesn't know what he's doing. He doesn't know what he's talking about. Um,
Mm.
and he is just that. He is forwarding an agenda and a set of conclusions, without evidence. But he's a person that I tend to just stay away from for
Mm.
various other reasons.
So, are you, like, so you're mainly like scholar stuff. You don't fight against a lot of like creationists or flat earthers or anti-vaxxers or other science deniers.
Those guys are. I've certainly encountered, confronted, corrected creationist talking points,
Uh,
and well, here's the thing, right? Um, that, from my perspective, the way that I come to this is, I think maybe one of the reasons why I don't spend a lot of time focused on someone like on people like creationists, for example,
okay.
is because when it comes to the biblical text, they're probably not necessarily wrong in the ways in which they choose to read it. For example,
Okay.
I I think it's abundantly clear that the writer of the first creation story in the book of Genesis, in Genesis chapter 1, and there's multiple creation stories. The author of the Genesis 1 creation story sincerely believed that the earth was created in 6 days, in 6 24-hour days. That is what the text says. Now, there are certainly all sorts of ways to get around that main point, and there's lots of different types of Christian theologies which have developed strategies for dealing with that scientific error. Um, but the creationists are generally right about this, that when it comes to the original intent of this text, it's 6 24-hour days. Same with the flat earth stuff. The Bible is a flat earth book. The
Mhm.
picture of the world as it is presented in the biblical text is of a flat disc that's supported on pillars, beneath it, and it's surrounded by water. There's water underneath it, and there's water that's held back by a dome in the sky, and that's the rains, the windows of heaven open, and the rain falls down. This is the picture that we get throughout the Bible.
Mhm.
So, again, uh they're right. In fact, very often what I find, um there's certainly a couple of these guys. There was this this one flat Earth guy, who was really prominent for a number of years before he died of COVID. I believe was Rob. What was his last name? Rob Skiba, I think was his name. I don't know if you're familiar with that name. He's been dead for like 6 years now. But he was pretty prominent in flat earth spaces for a long time, and I used to listen to and watch a lot of his stuff because when it came to reading the Bible, he was pretty damn good at it. Uh, he would read the text the way it was written. He would read the text and he would tell his audience, "Look, I'm just trying to be a good Christian here. I'm just reading what the Bible actually says about the earth and, the sky and the cosmos and stuff." So, like on those points, I'm like, "Yeah, you are absolutely right." This is what the biblical authors thought the earth looked like. So, the the tragic thing about this for a lot of people is that when it comes to the Bible, um, to survive and to salvage any sense of scientific or rational respectability in the modern world requires you to abandon the original intent of the authors of the biblical text and to adopt and to embrace science in those places where it absolutely clearly contradicts and confronts the biblical text.
Okay.
It's the only
Um,
way to do it.
yeah. So at this point, can you let's say like first like the Pentateuch first 5 books, I think. Can you
Mhm.
take them out apart and no, at this point, do you know which stories are separate from the other stories, like the two Genesis accounts? I think
Right.
there's
Yeah.
like two flood accounts too. I think not
Hmm.
next up together. Can you at this point? Can you separate them all into they're each separate sections?
There are certainly scholars who think they can. And what you're talking about is so just to back up a little bit, and if you spend enough time listening to Christian apologists, you'll hear in large part most people have heard about this thing called the documentary hypothesis, which was developed in the mid 19th century, which showed that the first 5 books of the Old Testament, the 5 books of Moses, the Torah, the Pentateuch, um, were formed from earlier sources that we no longer have, but we can potentially reconstruct by just
Okay.
just carefully reading the text and making observations of what's happening and through seeing some of the theological interests, the social political interests of the individual authors. So it was originally thought there were 4 sources that scholars have identified as: J, the Yahwist source; E, the Elohist source; P, the priestly source; and D, the book of Deuteronomy and the Deuteronomic source. Without getting really deeply into it, over the course of 150 years, there's been no end of criticism and refinement of this theory, to the point that I think most scholars now reject the idea that there were 4 sources. Not
Okay.
everyone. There's still, like, Joel Baden is a very, very good scholar at Yale Divinity School who still holds to the 4 source theory. Richard Elliott Friedman, who is now retired, but for years, I think at Vanderbilt. He also holds to the 4 source theory, but I would say most scholars nowadays are content, and this is where I place myself, are content to say there are multiple sources in the Pentateuch, in the Torah. Um, we don't know all of them, but
Right.
what we can identify, we can certainly identify one of them. And the one that everyone is feels pretty confident about is this one called P, the priestly source. So now a lot of scholars will talk about the source material in the Pentateuch, myself included, and distinguish between P and not P. So
So, so
and not P can include it doesn't it not P is not necessarily all the same source, right? Like those are just sources that are not P.
so P is the
But
only
we're
one. So P is the only one so far we can definitely pin down.
I would say most scholars would agree on what P looked like and what P was, and could and would be comfortable saying, yeah, we can identify P. So, for example, the Genesis 1 creation story is the priestly creation story. That's part of P. You have a priestly layer in the story of Noah's Ark, which is an interesting
It-
example.
yeah, is that the one of the every all twos, or is that the one of the seven?
Well, actually, can I if I can share my screen, I can
Sure,
show you.
sure.
Um, let me just pull something up. So this is I actually provided just a little snapshot of what this looks like in I just have to open something up here. So this is from a chapter in my most recent book, God's Propaganda: Pulling Back the Curtain on What the Bible Wants You to See. And um let me just grab a window. It's that one. If you can put that, I'll make it a little bit bigger here so it's easier to see. And I'll just read some of this. Is that good? I can make it
Yeah,
even bigger. So let's do that. Let's embiggen it even more. There. Okay. So starting at this paragraph on the top of the page here, uh, ascertaining the who and when from ancient literature is frequently a challenge. And in view of the substantially edited final product in our Hebrew Bible, that's what HB stands for, these features of scribal intervention become very important data points. In antiquity, authorship was a complex matter. Intellectual property was either an unknown or novel idea. Texts were collected, copied, recopied, and heavily edited and supplemented. As we discovered in the previous chapter, there existed a multitude of sources in the form of various genres of ancient Near Eastern literature, and they informed each other in an unconstrained network of ideas. For example, by the way, I got that unconstrained network of ideas is something that I got from Apologia. For example, the Epic of Gilgamesh contains the flood story of Utnapishtim, but which also seems to have been known from an earlier version that survives in the Babylonian account of Atrahasis. The same story is also found in the Hebrew Bible, but in the book of Genesis, it was carefully compiled from two versions into earlier sources. What most scholars call the Yahwist, that's the non-priestly, and the priestly source, J and P. So on the left here, I have I've got in two columns what this looks like, in my opinion, when you divide the sources and when you separate them and you read the story as it runs according to both of them. So, uh, just in Genesis chapter 6, verses 5 through 8, the flood story, according to Jay, looks like this. God saw that the wickedness of humanity was great on the earth, and every inclination of the thoughts of their heart was only evil all the time. Yahweh regretted that he had made mankind on the earth, and his heart was filled with concern. So Yahweh said, I will wipe from the face of the ground humanity which I have created, from man to livestock, to crawling things, and to birds, for I regret that I have made them. But Noah found favor in the eyes of Yahweh. So, a couple of things you'll notice here is that God is identified as Yahweh in this part of the story, that he has made this commitment to wipe humanity from the face of the ground, because the thoughts of their heart was evil. all the time. Now let's look at the way this story unfolds in the priestly version. The earth became corrupt before the gods, and I do believe the word is probably plural there, and it was filled with violence. God saw the earth, and behold, it was corrupt, for all flesh had corrupted their way on the earth. So, something that's introduced here that is absent from the J story is violence. They are, and it repeats here. So that's Genesis chapter 6, 11 to 12, and this picks up in verse 9 in Genesis. Sorry, this picks up. Where does this pick up? I have to go down and look. So this picks up in verse 13. It says here, God said to Noah, the end of all flesh is coming before me, for the earth is filled again with violence because of them. And behold, I am about to destroy them with the earth. And here he provides the instructions. Make for yourself an ark of gopher wood. Make an ark with compartments, and you shall cover it inside and out with pitch. This is how you shall make it. And you can see how, like in the first column, like all this stuff is blank because none of this information is there. This is all information that's added in the priestly version. And there's this strong fixation on the dimensions of the ark, 300 cubits long, 50 cubits wide, 30 cubits high. Make a window for it. Then he goes on to say, I am bringing the flood of water upon the earth to destroy all flesh, which is the breath of life from under heaven. Everything that is on the earth will die. He talks about keeping his covenant with Noah and his children, and then he mentions again how he's going to destroy all flesh, and he says, "Bring two of every kind
Mhm.
into the ark to keep them alive with you. They shall be male and female, from the birds, from their kind, from the livestock for their kind, from every creeping thing of the ground for its kind." Notice again also this fixation, similar kind of language that you read in Genesis chapter 1 about things being created after their kind. This is an expression that's common to the priestly writer. Okay, so two of everything will come to you to keep alive. As for you, take for yourself some of all the food for eating and gather it for yourself. It shall be food for you and for them. Noah did it. He did so according to all that God had commanded him. Now, in the J story, we don't have any information about the building of the boat itself, of the ark. It says that Noah found favor in the eyes of Yahweh. And then the next thing we read down here is that then Yahweh said to Noah, go into the ark, you and your whole family, because I have found you righteous in this generation. Take with you 7 pairs of every kind of clean animal, a male and its mate, and 1 pair of every kind of unclean animal, a male and its mate, and also 7 pairs of every kind of bird of the sky, male and female, to keep the seed alive throughout the earth. 7 days from now, I will make it rain on the earth for 40 days and 40 nights, and I will annihilate from the surface of the ground every living thing I have made. Noah did everything just as Yahweh had commanded him. So something else different that you'll notice here in the P story, when it describes the arrival of the actual flood, it says this: after 7 days, the waters of the flood were on the earth. In the 600th year that Noah lived, on the 17th day of the second month, on that day, the springs of the great Tehom, the great deep, as it's usually translated, were cleaved and the windows of the sky were opened. This is all language again that's very familiar from the Genesis chapter 1 story. These are all terms that appear there, that show up there. And notice also the focus here on the age of Noah at the time of the flood. It goes on to say the windows of the sky were opened. Rain was on the earth for 40 days and 40 nights, just as in the non-P story. On that day, Noah entered, and his sons Shem, Ham, and Japheth. together with his wife and the wives of his 3 sons into the ark. They and every wild animal according to its kind, all livestock according to their kinds, every creature that moves along the ground according to its kind. Uh, they all came to Noah, pairs of all flesh that has within them the breath of life. So those who went in, male and female, from all flesh entered, just as God commanded him. The peace story goes on to say then that it was 150 days that they were uh, tossing around there in the boat. So yeah, the author of the book of Genesis stitched these stories together carefully,
Mhm.
um eliminated certain portions, I think, of certain parts of each story. Seems to have liked the peace story better than the non-peace stories, so took a bunch of things or just left a bunch of things out of the non-peace story, like the construction of the ark. But you see a lot of these doublets and these
Mhm.
repetitions, some of these changes as well, right? Like in p, 2 pairs of all kinds of animals. In the non-peace story, 7 pairs of clean animals, and just 2 pairs of
So that
non-clean
arc was packed way
animals.
more, a lot more.
Sorry, say that again.
So that arc was packed way more tighter.
Yeah, yes, exactly. Many more animals. Boy, I wonder if they've accounted for that at the or how they've worked that out at the Ark Encounter. That's a good question. Now I'm curious. But
I wonder if dinosaurs were considered clean animals. Since
so they I believe they would be, because they're not cloven hoofed, and they don't they chew the cud, or is it not chewing the cud? I honestly, um, so yeah, that's a good question. And who knows? Like, we don't know. I guess uh, biologists are of the opinion that a lot of them were feathered. So, I don't know what would they have looked like. What would the early Israelites have imagined these creatures to be, uh, clean or unclean? It's a good question, and I don't know.
uh,
I think it's possible they could be clean animals.
so, like I said, right now there's like only two official sources that we know of: Priestley and not Priestley.
Well, there's lots of sources, but the
Okay.
one that we're confident in identifying is the Priestley source, and everything else just gets thrown into the bucket of non-Priestley. So I still think there was a J source of some kind, like a Yahwist source. So I will still talk about the Yahwist. One of the ways that scholars used to distinguish the Yahwist from the Elohist source, this is based on the usage of the name for God, the
Yeah.
identity of God. When in the Yahweh source is usually called Yahweh. In the Elohist source, he's usually called Elohim, which we translate into English as God. The misconception is that this is across the board, or that this is the logic is that the names themselves indicate the sources. That's not quite correct. It's what the people at the time knew. So at according to the Yahweh source, everybody knew the name Yahweh from the beginning of time. But in the Elohist source, people didn't know the name of Yahweh up until Yahweh revealed himself to Moses at Mount Sinai. So prior to that, the Elohist, or sorry, the priestly writer would have called him like El Shaddai.
Yeah.
or L, right? So, but one of the other things that that was common for a while in distinguishing something like the Yahwist source from the Elohist source was that it seems like in a lot of the stories of the so-called Elohist, there's a focus on prophets and on prophecy and dreams and visions. You can actually kind of put those all in a bucket and they all look kind of similar and they look
Mhm.
distinct
Okay.
from other stories in there as well. But then like there's other pieces of literature too, right? Like the whole story of Joseph seems like it's a story that stands on its own. That it, this is a story that people told, that was written down once, that it was a um it was self-contained,
Yeah.
and at some point somebody incorporated it into the narrative.
Yeah, I also just another thing, like the flood. I heard there's like two separate tellings of that story too.
Sorry, say that again. I got distracted by the chat.
Like I heard there's two separate tellings of Joseph's story too. Like two separate
Oh,
events.
yeah. There's yes. So there are. I do this thing actually on one of my videos. I did a whole. It's pretty old now. I think it's probably 5 years old. It's one of the first things on my channel. Um, but I did a 3 video series all about the documentary hypothesis, and in one of the videos I show how the story of Joseph is broken down into these two sources. Um, and in one, you could think about it like this. One of them is the story of Joseph, the guy who had these dreams of grandeur, and annoyed the hell out of his brothers and his parents by, sharing these dreams with them all the time. So that's kind of the one story. And in that story, there's the name of his father in that story is Jacob, I think. But then in the other story, so that's Joseph and Joseph the dreamer story. The other Joseph story is Joseph, who was, um, his father's favorite son, and his father in that story is named Israel. So he's his father's favorite son. His father likes him so much that he gives him this coat, this magnificent coat of probably many colors. We're not entirely sure about the translation there, but and it makes his brothers very, very jealous. So that's like the second. So they're both different takes kind of on the same thing, and
Are,
they're
are,
mashed together.
yeah, are either of these the priest sources or neither one of?
I have to go back and look at which is which, but yes, one of those is the priestly story of the priest story. The game is really given away when it comes to the part in the Joseph story where he comes to check on his brothers who are tending the sheep of their father, and they're upset. So they take him and they put him in a pit. They take off his coat, and then they end up selling him to traders who take him down to Egypt. And in Egypt, he's put into a slave market and sold to Potiphar, one of the captains in Pharaoh's army. So in this story, this is really where the game is given away, because what happens is Joseph is put into a pit, and then a group of Midian traders comes along and finds him in the pit, and then it says the brothers sell him to a group of Ishmaelite traders who take him down to Egypt, where he is then sold to in an Egyptian slave market by the Midianite traders. So clearly, what's happening is in one version of the story, there's Ishmaelites, and in
Mhm.
another version of the story, there's Midianites. And whoever stitched the stories together, was just kind of mixing it all up. And if
Yeah.
you carefully read what's happening as it's narrated, it doesn't make any sense at all.
Yeah, also, it doesn't make sense really to me, thinking about it as somebody who used to like love genealogy. At this point, both the Ishmaelites and the Midianites would just been like their third or fourth cousins at this point.
Yeah, yeah, probably. That's
I think they
certainly the Ishmaelites, the Midianites less so, but yeah, the Ishmaelites. So, yeah, it's just a big mess. It is. In one of the stories, Judah is the one who rescues Joseph, and in another one of the stories, Reuben is the one who rescues Joseph.
yeah, like I mentioned
Uh,
earlier, like one of them, in the stories, they would have been they threw him down there because they were jealous of him. But the other
mhm.
ones, they were like pissed off at him about the dreams. They
Yeah,
threw him there for different
yeah.
reasons.
Exactly, different reasons. So, yeah. No, it's just a big mess.
So, so do you do anything for when you're not
Do I do
when you're not filling your brain with stuff? You do anything for fun, like games
No,
or
when no. I work all the time. But
okay.
no, I don't no, I do things for fun. I enjoy movies and television. I will actually watch movies quite often with Dapper Dinosaur and Vishanti. We're working our way through a spreadsheet of over 300 horror and sci-fi movies. I don't know that we're gonna actually get through them all, but I mean, I like to snow. Those aren't just for show. I like to snowboard. I live in the Pacific Northwest of Canada, and there's snow in the mountains, nearby me. So I like to do that in the wintertime. And then when things warm up and dry out a little bit, I am on my mountain bike as often as I possibly can.
So,
So
do you live in the area up north where 40 is summer, like 40 is short weather, or
sorry.
is it a joke that some people make? Like people, I have friends that used to live in Florida, come up here, and they're like wearing jackets and 70-degree weather and stuff. They're
Oh,
cold.
when I see, yeah, oh, yeah, that's like warm, like cold. Okay, I see. You're using the freedom units. I don't understand.
Yeah,
I don't
you're,
understand
oh yeah, you're Celsius.
temperatures in the US. Yeah, and I can't do the conversion in my head either.
Okay.
So, otherwise I am famously good at math. But it's just not that one. So, but it's I mean, where I live is probably the warmest
Okay.
part of the country. Like right now, it's what is it? Let's see. Uh, dismiss that. Right now, the temperature is 6 degrees. I think it's raining. It rains a lot where I live, but I grew up on the other side of the Rocky Mountains in Calgary, where it's cold and snowy most of the winter. So,
All right. Oh,
but you got some other questions, I think,
yeah.
in the
This
chat
all
here.
right, let me go fast. The first one. There's the first one.
Yeah. Oh, this one, right. It's good to see you, by the way, Scott Duke. I feel like I haven't seen you around much lately, but it's good to see you. Um, what is the most interesting discovery of 2025 related to the Bible or the Dead Sea Scrolls? Um, well, I mean, I guess maybe the thing that was of greatest interest to me this year was the publication of a bunch of the data from the Hands That Wrote the Bible project, which is at the University of Groningen in the Netherlands. In the spring, they published a scientific article in PLOS One, where um, this was working in combination with computer scientists and using machine learning. The people at the University of Groningen are attempting to develop or to refine our systems and um our methods for doing paleography. Paleography is the study of ancient handwriting. It's the way that we date most ancient manuscripts. So that's what this project was about generally. One of the fairly interesting things that came out this last year, though, was new carbon 14 dates for a whole bunch of the manuscripts of the Dead Sea Scrolls. And they were doing this. This is the reason they did new carbon dating was because it's been, oh, 30 years, I think, since the last time any carbon C14 dates were taken from any of the Dead Sea Scrolls manuscripts. And they wanted some new data in an effort to try and align these to the paleographic dates to just help to refine things.
So are those scrolls? Are they like very can they break apart very easily, or are they more
Oh
solid?
yeah, yeah, they're very, very fragile. And I we can talk about that in a minute here.
Okay.
But I wanted to, so one of the things that came out in this article, one of the manuscripts, sorry, I'll say it. One of the things that came out in this article was, interestingly, that through the carbon 14 dating and through the machine learning, the authors have suggested that a bunch of our dates for the manuscripts should, for certain manuscripts, should probably be pushed back, meaning that some of these manuscripts are actually even older than
Mhm.
we had at first thought. There is a manuscript of the book of Ecclesiastes that they are arguing could be early to mid third century, which is very, very old. Predates anything that we thought we had.
Wow.
Right in the Dead Sea Scrolls. Another one that certainly caught a lot of attention was there are 8 copies of parts of the book of Daniel in the Dead Sea Scrolls, and the oldest one of these was traditionally dated to about 125 BCE. I personally had this one dated at about 100 BCE, and the radiocarbon dates for this particular manuscript are between 220 BCE and 160 BCE. So the suggestion from the authors was that this is a manuscript that is clearly a lot older than we thought it was originally, and
But not as
appears to have been written very, very close in time to when,
mm,
the actual book of Daniel was written.
but not as old. But not as old as some people claim it is.
Yeah, so and here's the thing, right? What happened was, because the carbon 14 date, the reason why scholars are convinced that the book of Daniel dates to 165 BCE at the earliest is because there are prophecies in the book of Daniel, which provide very precise information of things that happened after or yeah, after one, or sorry, only up to 165 BCE. That's the sort of the what we call the um um uh sorry. my brain is. That
Is that about
it's like the terminus,
is that the time
terminus,
around the
yeah, it's
is that the time right with
the
the
latest point in
Maccabee
which
revolt
something
around that time? Or
Yeah,
I
yeah,
forget when that
exactly.
is.
Exactly. So, because of that, we're pretty sure we know when about this text was written. Um, as soon as a whole bunch of Christian apologists saw that the C14 dates were between 220 and 160, of course, what they did one of two things. They either said, "Well, look, we now know that Daniel was actual prophecy because this is something that possibly could have been written as early as 220 BCE." And then the other thing they did was they just took the median, the midpoint there, and said, "Well, look, this is a manuscript that was written in 180 BCE, therefore, before the Hasmonean revolt." But that's not, I mean, that's just not how this works. And the authors of the study were very careful to point out that the carbon dating continues to support scholarly theories about the composition of the book of Daniel, and shows that yes, is fits right within the same time period, time frame.
So no scholar thinks it was written like what 500 was it 500?
No, 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 no. Most scholars agree the book of Daniel was written, you know, in 165. There's a handful of crackpots who think it was written in 500 BCE.
Let's see. Let's see
So
what
that was very interesting.
I,
But thanks for the question.
uh,
Oh, some of the bad atheist ideas to look out for. Um, so be very suspicious of anything that tries to paint early Christianity like a bunch of guys in trench coats twirling their mustaches. Um, so there's a lot of ideas about the power structures that were in place, which provided motivation for something like forming the New Testament canon. No, it's it can, you know, canonization was a much more complex process than just people attempting to assert power and control over a population using a set of books. It's something that developed over a long period of time, fairly naturally, is just a reflection of, you know, what was common, what was popular in most Christian communities in the third century CE. So that's one of them. Of course, anything, you know, I continue to beat the drum for the historical Jesus. I think that and most scholars continue to maintain that the most plausible models for Christian origins are those that maintain there was actually a guy who
okay.
lived and was executed by the
So
Romans.
so historical Jesus is there was a person there, but he wasn't divine.
Nope, not divine,
Okay.
just an ordinary guy, right? And this cult, this cult developed around the memories of this charismatic apocalyptic preacher who got in trouble with the Romans. Here's what I think happened. I think there was an historical Jesus. I think he led an apocalyptic movement, meaning that he believed that he either was the Messiah or that he was one of, like, a forerunner for the Messiah who was coming to destroy the Romans. I don't know which, but this guy uh, entered the temple in Jerusalem and attempted a coup in the temple in Jerusalem, was arrested by the temple priests who were so upset about this that they wanted to make an example of him, and it wasn't very difficult in working with the Romans to ensure that he was executed for sedition by crucifixion.
Yeah,
Um,
I was wondering why they this this they had in the Bible and stuff they set the Christians in that and they couldn't just like stone them themselves. They had to,
yeah, and I mean they could have, right? But yeah, it's clearly something. I think it was a temple infraction that started this, but the Romans were pretty clearly convinced and this is not uncommon. This is something that they would do because they were very intent on keeping the peace as
yeah.
best as they could. So they would have no problem putting down someone or crucifying a figure like that who's causing a
Yeah.
disruption.
It's something I noticed, when I learned about how what we know of what's of the Gospels written in order, like there's a little pattern going on. Like the first one, where he was a human that got adopted. The next two, he was he was a demigod, and fourth one, he was fully divine.
Yeah, you can see these developments. They're not necessarily consistent, but you can track the developments in who the early Christians thought Jesus was over a period of time. And he gets more and more spectacular
Yeah.
as time goes.
I think this is the same a little bit in the Old Testament, where I think earlier they were more polyistic, than they went less that.
Polytheistic.
Yeah,
I would say that there was never a point at which there is a clear presentation of what we would consider monotheism in any part of the Bible. Um, I think people misunderstand the way the biblical authors are conceiving of a lot of this stuff. It's not that Yahweh is the only God. It's that all the other gods are either subservient or they are so weak and powerless as to be completely ineffectual
yeah.
or useless.
Like
But they're
you see
still
that.
there.
Yeah, I can see even in people that what the first commandment is, but what the proclaimed first commandment, where it says, "No other gods before me." So I mean, there have to be other gods to have before him.
Exactly. Exactly. Yahweh is a jealous God because, you know, there's other gods out there. But there's also echoes within the text of some very early parts of the text seem to show a clear awareness that Yahweh is a god that competes with other deities, and Deuteronomy chapter 32 verses 8 to 9 preserves this old idea of Yahweh's subservience to the high Canaanite god El. So that's right in there in the biblical text. It's in Psalm 82 as well. Um I think you can there's places one of the places I actually talk about in my book is Psalm 87 actually, which seems to my eye to be kind of an account of Yahweh's uh eh, Yahweh's ascendancy or his elevation above the high god El. I'll read it to you if I can find it
Okay.
here. That is what is that? That is Ball Psycho. Psalm 89. Here, this is I'll read this. Uh this is Psalm 89 verses 6 to 19, 5 to 18 in the English. That's if you have the book. I know that there's some people in the audience who have the book. This is chapter 5,
Real
uh, s- starting on page 140. Uh, your wonders, Yahweh, are praised by the sky, and your faithfulness in the assembly of holy ones. That word there, by the way, is kedoshim in Hebrew, and this is a common term to refer to other divine beings, other gods. For who in the clouds can face off with Yahweh? Who is like Yahweh among the sons of the gods? El, greatly dreaded in the council of the holy ones, the Kedoshim once more, and awesome above all around him? Yahweh, God of armies, who is like you, mighty Yah? That's a shortened form of Yahweh, possibly a more ancient form of the name. Your faithfulness surrounds you. You alone rule the pride of the sea. When its waves surge, you still them. You alone crushed Rachav like a corpse. That's an ancient chaos deity. With your strong arm, you scattered your enemies. The sky is yours. So also the earth, the world, and all it holds. You alone founded them. Zaphon, and to your right, that word Zaphon there is often translated in your English Bibles as north. This is actually the mountain upon which the Canaanite god Baal set his mountain court, like his jurisdiction was Mount Zaphon. It's an actual mountain, and it's very far in the north. It's in Syria. Um, so it's interesting that it shows up here in this text. You alone created them, Tabor and Hermon. These are also mountains nearby to the no, it's north of the city of Samaria, I think. Um, you have a mighty arm, strong is your hand, and your right hand exalted. Righteousness and justice are the base of your throne. Steadfast love and faithfulness approach your face. Happy is the people who know the festal shout. This is the festal shout. Yahweh. They walk in the light of your face. They exalt your name all day long, and they are exalted in your righteousness. For you are the glory of his strength. You alone, our horn is exalted by your favor. Truly, our shield is Yahweh, our King, the Holy One, the Kedosh of Israel. Now, I'm just going to read this next paragraph here and kind of explain the way I see Psalm 89. Much as in the rest of the ancient Near East, gods were descended from long forgotten distant deities of the remote past who are no longer active. At Ugarit, El has been replaced or is progressively being usurped by Baal. In Psalm 89, Yahweh is depicted in the first part as most prominent among the other gods, possibly mounting a challenge to El in verse 6 for supremacy in the divine council. Who is like Yahweh among the sons of the gods? The last word translated here is Elim, a plural word meaning gods. But these are unmistakably the sons of El. In the following verse, English translations will render this as God is greatly feared. That's the NIV. But I wonder if the explicit challenge within this rhetorical question is missed as a result. Of course, the answer to the question implied by the Psalter is that no one can compare to, no one can challenge Yahweh. What happens when we see here the name El, not the generic God, as part of the challenge? Who is like Yahweh among the sons of the gods? The answer is no one. Not even El, greatly dreaded in the council of the holy ones and awesome above all around him. The answer is no. Yahweh is the God of armies. Who is like you, mighty Yah? No one, not even El. So I think
Yeah,
within the Bible, you might even have some of this tension between Yahweh and the high Canaanite god El.
and that's where the two different sources come from.
No, that this is not necessarily
Oh,
a source issue. This is just
okay,
this is about the early development of Yahweh from being subservient to the high Canaanite god
okay,
El to become the high god for the Israelites.
yeah. As someone as someone trying to write and publish a fictional book, I probably think that you writing the non-fictional books even probably even harder since you have to have your facts checked
Oh,
and stuff.
I don't know. I think writing fiction, I don't think I could possibly write fiction. I mean, it just in my way of thinking, there's just too many moving parts. I would get
Yeah,
confused and frustrated. There would be continuity errors all over the place
yeah,
in
that's
my
true.
novel.
But you have to make sure hopefully you can make sure what you're writing down is actually sourced out.
That feels more difficult to me.
All right.
So
Well, let's see. All right. Thank you for a question. It's not really a question. I know it's more as a statement, I guess.
I think I saw one. I saw a couple here earlier. Scott Duke had a question about Joel Baden's book, The
Yeah.
Historical David, The Real Life of an Invented Hero. I really like this book. Um, I encourage people to read it. I think it's very good. The chapter actually in this book that I wrote about David draws quite a bit from Baden's book as well. It's very good. So, and then I think there was another one here from Holly.
Yes.
Yeah. Uh, why do you think there is such a focus on dimensions in the priestly source? Because the priesthood, the members, the people who are writing this text are absolutely obsessed and fixated on sacred space. This is a very big deal in the ancient Near East, generally speaking, but certainly within certain castes of the priesthood, certainly within the temple cult, there is a strong focus on sacred space. There's this idea of sacred dimensions, of sacred
Oh,
time.
so would the priestly source be the one that wrote the dimensions that like the tabernacle and stuff? That be
Yep.
theirs?
Yeah, a lot. Really, when reading through the Torah, anywhere there where you encounter a lot of repetition of numbers and dimensions, time, years, calendar dates, these are all things that the priestly writers were very, very interested in and spent a lot of time unpacking. So that would be why. There's a much later Jewish text called the Book of Jubilees, was written in sort of towards the end of the 3rd century, the beginning of the 2nd century, and into the mid 2nd century, which sort of takes a lot of this focus and fixation from the priestly materials on dates in particular, but also dimensions
Yeah.
and space, and it just kind of amps it all up to 11. It's pretty fascinating.
Yeah, speaking of like books like Jubilee and stuff, do you know why in history that these some books like that were like quote made quote canon and the other
Why
ones?
they didn't make it?
Yeah,
Why weren't they? So I think they, there was a time before there was any canon. There was certainly Jewish communities who considered these books on par with other parts of what we would consider the Bible, right?
yeah.
Um, but it just, with the destruction of Herod's temple, with the dispersion of the Jews from the city of Jerusalem after 135, lots of things changed. The ways in which people interacted with their literature and their rituals had to change in the absence of the temple. And I think at this point, this is really the time when people start to get very concerned about what is quote unquote God's word, what is part of uh scripture, the Bible, what is in and what is out. Is and a lot of it has to do with the way that that the religion changed. Up until that point, there was quite a bit more variability within Judaism. There were varieties of expression of Judaism, some of them quite different. So yeah, yeah.
And they did the same thing like 300 years later with the New Testament.
Yeah, I mean, I guess, yeah. I think now I don't know nearly as much about the forces behind canonization in the New Testament.
Okay.
I usually stop paying attention to things after about the year 200, so becomes much less interesting to me.
And how far back do you go?
How far
If you're
back do I go?
yeah, if
Well,
200
like,
CE is your limit forward, what's your, you have
yeah.
a limit back? You have a limit
Well,
backwards.
so my focus really is on this period, on the second temple period. So this period of time from about 500 BC to the end of the first century
So
CE. But of course,
so
well,
about the starting with the like the Persians to
yeah, yeah.
early
But of
Romans.
course, because I'm a biblical scholar, and because most of the literature there, and maybe not most of it, but huge chunks of the literature there were written during the earlier part of the Iron Age, and lots of it goes back very, very old.
Mm.
um is very old, sorry, like the Song of Devorah in Judges 5 is probably from the 10th century BC.
Oh,
The Song of the Sea, which is the oldest text in the Hebrew Bible, is probably 11th century
okay.
BC. So
Is 10th
it
century, is that 1,000 BCE or 10,000 BCE?
no, that's between 1,000 and 900
Okay.
BCE is 10th century. So an 11th century would be between 1,100, 1,100 and 1,000 BCE.
Alright.
So
Yeah, everyone has their time periods that they like, or their so. But 90 minutes, you have to get ready soon. So, you have anything coming up you want to advertise?
oh yeah, so I'm starting a new Hebrew course on Tuesday. For anybody who's interested in learning Hebrew, you can sign up at digitalhammurabi.com. We'll meet for an hour and a half every Tuesday night at 5 o'clock Pacific, which is like 8 o'clock Eastern, and it runs for 10 weeks. So if that's something you've ever been interested in doing, then come and check it out. I finished up just before Christmas my first full Hebrew course, online Hebrew course, which is 3 semesters, and the guys who took it, uh when we were finished, we were reading through we read through the entire first chapter of the book of Ruth. So it's so that there's that. And then I do every week, this is a new thing in the new year, every Thursday night at 5 o'clock, I have a 1 hour Hebrew reading stream. I have a guest on, and we read Hebrew text, and we translate it, and we look at interesting. It's super, super nerdy. So there's that one. I stream every Friday at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, and then every second Saturday at 7 o'clock Pacific, 10 o'clock Eastern, I have a show called Budget Scripture Saturdays.
Mm.
When I get drunk like every time, and we do silly shit. Nitty and Dr. Tapioca Weasel are my co-hosts, and that's tonight,
Oh,
by the way. So in an hour and a half, um, Budget Scripture Saturday on my
nice.
channel.
Uh,
It's gonna be fun. It's
Yeah,
always fun.
for me, next week, me and my friend Jillian are going to be talking
Oh
about
yeah.
a more recent document, not recent in modern time, but more recenter than what you guys you study. We're going to talk about the Magna Carta.
Oh, cool. That's cool.
Yeah,
I like Jillian.
and then in 2 weeks, 3 weeks, we're going to be reviewing Phase 3 of at the MCU.
Oh, okay. Wow.
Yeah, I do have one more question before we go. Is either the Old Testament is either like the Samuel Kings or Chronicles the priestly source? Since since Chronicles is pretty much the retelling of Samuel and Kings again.
Can you repeat your
But,
question?
well, Chronicles is like pretty much a retelling
Yeah.
of Samuel and Kings. It's one of those like a priestly source.
Yeah. Oh, no, no. That's all. So what's happening there is now I shouldn't quite say it like that. So, most scholars agree that the what we call the Deuteronomistic history, which is in Joshua, Judges, Samuel, and Kings, is an early attempt at like telling a a history of the kingdoms, the
Mhm.
northern and southern kingdom, and that was first, and then it was followed up in the Persian period by another retelling, and just
Okay.
focused on the kingdoms themselves in the books of Chronicles, which
Okay.
uses the Deuteronomistic. So the Deuteronomistic history is called that because it tells the story on the basis of the ritual prescriptions of the book of Deuteronomy.
Okay.
So whoever wrote Samuel and Kings was very, very focused on making sure that everybody is the law in view is the book of Deuteronomy. So that does change in the retelling in the Persian period in Chronicles. They're using Samuel King's as a source. They're rewriting a lot of it.
Okay.
They probably scholars also think that they had other sources too,
Okay.
that may have even predated stuff in Samuel and Kings. But the focus there is much more so in line with things that you would find in the priestly
Okay.
source of the
All
Pentateuch.
right.
Definitely there's a much stronger focus on both the legitimacy of the line of David and his connection, their connection to the temple, in
Okay.
particular to the Levitical priesthood.
Okay.
So,
So would the priestly source be more of this like a southern kingdom area than
mm,
less of a northern kingdom, or they both sides?
so yeah, I believe I would have to go back and look.
Okay.
And there's a very good book. If I could recommend a book about this,
Okay.
it would be The Consuming Fire by Liana Feldman. It's her translation of the priestly source, along with a very, very good introduction to it. So check that out.
Uh,
Um,
you want to put the link to your book in the chat? I can put it in the description.
I can do that. I have it
Uh,
here
for those who
actually.
haven't gotten it yet.
And Scott suggested, and I'm happy to provide you with a complimentary copy of the audiobook.
Oh,
You want
cool.
me to put it into the yeah, I can do that. I'll just stick it into the chat here. Oh, except oh yeah, there it is. See, it won't link though. You probably will have to
Oh,
copy
oh yeah.
paste it.
Oh yeah,
yourself,
no, or I gotta
initially.
make you I gotta make you
A mod.
yeah. So write something real fast.
No,
Write something real.
yeah, I am a terrible mod, by the way,
Okay.
so nobody should do it. Resist the urge
Or
because
or you can
yeah,
or you can put it in private chat too.
I could do that as well. I'll do that there, if I can. There it is. Chat. Is that the? Oh, that's the. I I don't know Restream, so I'm not sure if I can find the
It'd be at the
private
bottom.
chat.
This would be at the bottom of the screen on the
It
very
just
bottom.
says chat, and
So,
it is just the regular chat. So you might have to
oh,
copy and repaste it into the
okay.
chat to
Okay.
but yeah. So sorry about that. Uh,
Well, as we figure it out, like remember, uh, his channel in 2 hours or 90 minutes. You'll
hour
be
and a
talking.
half thereabouts, yeah. 7 o'clock, 10 o'clock Eastern, my channel.
Like I said, like if you ever want to come back on here and talk about more stuff, you're always welcome.
Sweet.
Right. Do you have a catchphrase you say?
No. Oh, well, actually, I mean, there's a couple. I often like to tell people I fucking love the Bible. I even have a shirt. I had shirts made. You can buy them from my merch store, which is linked on my channel. Something else that I like to tell people when I finish my shows, I like to say hatikva, which is a Hebrew word, a Hebrew term that means sorry, I'm trying to do a couple things at once here. There we go. Okay. That one's not let's see. I think I'm gonna mark this one. Okay. Sorry, I'm just grabbing
Yeah.
uh a code for you. So I
Yeah.
like to say hatikva when I finish up my shows. It's a Hebrew word that means wait, that didn't work. It's a Hebrew word that means the hope, and it is also the name of the Israeli national anthem. The reason I like to say Hatikva is because last year, one young Christian apologist by the name of Wesley Huff got himself into some trouble by saying some silly things about the Great Isaiah Scroll, which is the oh look, I see a private chat window now. I'll put this here as well.
Uh,
There we go. Okay, so that's for you.
Thank you.
Um, and I will uh let me grab the book link that you can use to put in uh the chat as well. Oh, where am I? There we go. And then I will finish telling this absolutely riveting story. There. Okay, so the second one is
Okay.
the book link that you can put in the chat. So, Wesley Hoff got himself in trouble by saying dumb things about the Great Isaiah Scroll, the most famous of all the Dead Sea Scrolls, and he then made a stream to correct a bunch of the nonsense that he said. And he had a guest on who is an Old Testament textual critic by the name of John Mead. And John Mead was talking about how to define a word in Hebrew and was making the point that you can actually say full simple sentences with a single word in Hebrew. And he said this. He said, for example, I can say ahavtika, which means I love you. And it does. It means I love you. Wesley Huff then puts up on the screen a completely different word, which is not a verb. It's actually a noun, ha tikva. because it kind of sounds like a Havtika, but is totally different. It was hilarious. I thought it was hilarious. My friends all thought it was hilarious. So, that's what I like to say when I finish my shows. I like to say Hatikva, and everybody understands that when I say that, what I'm really saying is I love you guys. I do. So, Hatikva.
Sweet. I always say, never stop learning and enjoy the randomness.
Boy, that is a good thing to say.
Uh, like I said, if Phil's interested, we'll see you next week, and he'll see you in 90 minutes.
I will. Bye.
Bye. Hey, thanks for watching my podcast or Let's Play. If you want to help support my channel, you can make a monthly or yearly pledge on Patreon, or just a one-time donation on Vimeo, PayPal, or Cash App. For those looking for something to wear, we have some shirts, hats, and other stylish things in our merch store. If you enjoy gaming, you can always follow and sub to me on Twitch. For those who don't want to give money, I have an Amazon and Steam wish list who can help the channel out. And of course, just liking, leaving a comment, and sharing this video helps more than you can imagine. And always remember to never stop learning and enjoy the randomness.